On Thursday, the European Parliament passed a motion to freeze the ratification process of an investment agreement between China and the EU and urged China to lift the sanctions on some EU lawmakers which were imposed earlier this year. While China says the investment agreement is a balanced deal, not a gift. Tony Waterman reports from Brussels.
EU lawmakers were overwhelmingly in support of this motion, 599 in favor, 30 against, and 58 abstentions. And with that vote, the EU-China investment deal is effectively on ice. And lawmakers say they won't even consider starting the ratification process unless sanctions against 5 of their colleagues and the Subcommittee on Human Rights are lifted. Now, Beijing imposed those sanctions in March in retaliation to EU sanctions on 4 Chinese officials and 1 entity that Europe believes to be involved in alleged human rights violations in Xinjiang. This motion, though, throws the deal into jeopardy because the European Parliament needs to sign off on it before it can come into effect. Now, ahead of this vote, China's foreign ministry called on Europe to properly manage differences and promote the healthy and stable development of China-EU relations.
The China-EU investment agreement is a balanced and win-win deal that benefits both sides rather than a gift or favour bestowed by one side to the other. An early ratification of the agreement is in the interests of both China and the EU. The two sides should make positive efforts for this to happen.
Now, on the surface, this looks like a fight over sanctions, but the sanctions do signify differences between Beijing and Brussels. The relationship has become strained during the pandemic, and this deal would bring China and the EU closer together, at least economically, by unlocking new investment opportunities for both sides. European companies would be granted greater access to rapidly expanding and highly lucrative Chinese industries like manufacturing, healthcare, and cloud computing. And it's meant to help level the playing field and deal with state subsidies, something that EU firms have long complained about. And Chinese companies would gain entry into the bloc's manufacturing and renewable energy market at a time when the EU is throwing billions of dollars towards a green transition. Now, this agreement is not completely dead in the water. The European Commission continues to work on the technical aspects, including legal scrubbing and translating the text into the EU official languages. So while it's on hold for now, that doesn't mean it can't be picked back up in the future. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
For more insights into that, we're joined in the studio by Mr. Victor Gao, Chair Professor with Suzhou University. So, Professor, let's start with sanctions. And let's be very clear that it was few European politicians who started this disinformation campaign on China's internal affairs like Xinjiang and imposed on Chinese individuals and entities first. And after China responded according to the international law, and all of a sudden they think it was a huge issue that can be related to this investment agreement. Break down this paradox for us.
Well, first of all, it is indeed true that China-EU relations have deteriorated recently. But the real cause for the deterioration was not the Chinese sanctions, but it was caused by the false accusation of China by several European persons, including some members of Parliament of the EU Parliament. Now, this is very unfortunate, and when the Europeans are calling for the lifting of the sanctions, I think that's doable on the condition if these European persons, first of all, acknowledge their fault and promise never to provoke China in that wrongful manner. So I think for the European Union to halt the review of the CAI agreement, which is good for both China and EU, is really the wrong thing to do because it holds both China and EU as hostages of this round of escalation of tensions between China and EU. And the first party to move one step forward should be those European persons, and I hope they will recognize their guilt and no longer provoke China in the wrongful way and enable China to lift the sanctions, whatever they are, going forward. China and EU both need the ratification of this CAI agreement for their mutual benefit and for global growth as a whole.
Tell us more about that mutual benefit. Tell us more about the real momentum regarding China, Europe, trade and investment. right now?
Well, first of all, for several years, EU was already the largest trading bloc for China. It was taken over by ASEAN as a whole just a couple of years ago, but EU as a whole is still very, very important as a trading partner for China. Likewise, China is a very large trading partner for EU for many countries in Europe, big or small. However, in terms of mutual investment, it's lagging behind for all kinds of reasons, some on the part of EU, some on the Chinese part. And the EU and China spent about 7 years in negotiations about this CAI agreement, basically laying the groundwork to iron out all the major differences so that the European companies and the Chinese companies can reconcile with each other better and then move their capital investments into each other's country. This is huge. This is of great importance for both China as well as EU. Now, allow me to add, maybe there is one country which is not very happy to see China and EU signing or moving into execution of the CAI, but that country is not a European country. I think all the European countries, all the European companies should be feeling the same thing because they want to open China door bigger and wider, and the Chinese companies also want to invest more in Europe. And this happens at a time when both China and EU need to promote globalization and mutual economic development. Both countries are not completely out of the woods as far as the pandemic is concerned. We need to have a lot of stimulus. So the timing of this halting the review and the ratification of the CAI really cannot happen at the worst time. And I hope both China and EU will really exercise our wisdom, our courage, our vision, and use all the resources at our disposal to get over the differences and move on to the right path to maximize benefit for the Chinese people as well as for the European people.
Thank you very much, Professor Victor Gao with Suzhou University.